Known by the English as woodrunners and the New York-based Dutch as bush loppers, the Coureurs de Bois started out as outlaws. The French government and the Catholic Church both denounced their activities for a variety of reasons, mainly to do with taking their profits. But at the end of the day, they provided an essential service and played a major role in opening up Canada's west for Europeans and bringing beaver pelts east for First Peoples. Coureurs de Bois traveled deep into the interior of the province in order to trade with Aboriginal peoples, who couldn't or didn't want to travel to major trading ports on the eastern side of the continent. Not only was it a very long journey for some, but it was also very dangerous. The Iroquois Confederacy controlled most of the access routes through the southern Great Lakes and could charge any fee they wanted for safe passage. The Huron controlled many of the northern approaches to cities like Montreal and Trois-Rivières and could do the exact same. It didn't take long for major companies, the Northwest and the Hudson Bay Company, to realize that they had a problem. Not enough furs were coming into the east ports. They came up with a series of forts, factories, and houses that advanced company influences further and further into the interior. These trading posts meant that the First Nations trappers didn't have to travel as far in order to take their furs with an official company representative. They could spend more time trapping and less time traveling, resulting in more furs and higher profits for both the trappers and the company. The companies needed men to transport the traded goods to these posts, as well as bringing the vast quantities of furs back every year. The Coureurs de Bois had already proven to be capable of long, arduous journeys. As a result, many were hired as voyageurs. It was a tough life, and as one Jesuit priest said, they are the sort of person who thought nothing of covering 500 to 600 leagues by canoe, paddle in hand, or of living off corn and bear fat for 12 to 18 months, or of sleeping in bark or birch cabins. After the Royal Charter of 1793, the Hudson Bay Company built trading posts on the Rupert's Land and made efforts to reach out to the indigenous for the purpose of capitalizing on the fur trade and generating profits. They trapped beaver, which was traded. The European traders exchanged useful and practical items such as pots, pans, kettles, blankets, mirrors, weapons, and manufactured goods that were not otherwise available to the indigenous. The indigenous liked to maximize their profits and traveled around to various trading posts to see which post would give them the best trade for their pelts. In order to prevent competition between the posts, the Hudson Bay Company created a document called Standard of Trade Document, and it was used by all trading posts. The Métis are people in Canada who can trace their origins from mixing of First Nations people with European settlers. They were the children born to European men and their indigenous wives. When the fur trade moved west in the 1700s and 1800s, many French-Canadian fur traders found native wives and had children. The children born from these unions formed a new nation in Canada called the Western Métis. There were few European women in fur trade, and most fur traders married indigenous or mixed-blooded women for practical reasons. An indigenous woman could set up camp, dress furs, make leathers and clothing, cook meals, gather firewood, make moccasins, net snowshoes, and many other things essential to daily life for the fur traders. And when they bore children, they were called Métis children. Indigenous women not only provided companionship for the fur traders, they also aided in their survival. They were able to translate the language, sew new clothing for their husbands, cook food, and help resolve any cultural issues that arose. There were millions of beaver in North America, and because Canada had cold winters, the beaver's fur was excellent quality. The dark brown coat was thick, with long glossy outer fur and short soft under or inner fur. This inner fur was used to make felt hats. French and British fur traders set up a partnership with First Nations people to trade for the beaver furs. Beaver hats were considered a status symbol and were sometimes passed down from one generation to the next. Wearing a beaver hat expressed wealth and prestige in society. Once a trapper had captured the beaver, he skinned the deceased animal and removed the long hair from the pelt, leaving only the shorter hairs. These shorter hairs were closer to the skin and could produce soft felts that was strong and long-lasting. The beaver pelts were also waterproof and could be made into hats of various shapes. Trading posts were built to show a country's claim to an area of land and as well provide a place for the trade of furs. A trading post served as a general store where furs could be traded. It could have a workshop where some trading items were made, such as axes. Fur trading posts also provided living quarters for company employees, and they were also known to be used to protect colonies from enemy raids or attacks. Coureurs de Bois, or voyageurs, traded items such as mirrors, liquors, knives, pots, cooking utensils, beads, linen, wool, cloth, gunpowder, rifles, and lead in exchange for beaver pelts. The French men carried the furs from the First Nations villages to the trading posts, while traveling long distances through lakes and extreme wilderness conditions during all the seasons. In the 1800s, a currency was developed. It was a series of coins or tokens and represented the estimated value of a beaver pelt. All trading items had their value expressed in relation to the beaver pelt. If the indigenous did not spend the full value of the pelts they brought to the trading post, they received beaver tokens for the difference to be exchanged for goods at a later time. When beavers became scarce, the Hudson Bay Company moved their trading posts inland to find new sources of supply. Where the beaver was not abundant, the company traded goods for whatever animal was locally considered valuable. On the Pacific coast, it was the salmon, and in the far north, it was the Arctic fox.